It's really great to be here, and it's good to see so many people I've met in the course of looking at First Folio, so it's brilliant for us all to be together. I did a presentation sort of a bit blind, thinking, who is this going to be for? So I'm actually just going to go through my first slides very, very quickly, because they're not particularly relevant to you, you know all this. And I think what I'm going to try and get to is maybe the seeds of part of the next stage of this project that Claudine talked about, where I think we're keen to get some kind of work plans or lesson plans or sort of ways that you could do things with this site, building on, you know, one particular play that people are studying or one particular aspect of stagecraft that people are interested in or something like that. So I think we're sort of keen to think how we can make some pathways through, because of course, as with all big data projects or, you know, data-rich projects, the danger is that you look at it and think, wow, and then you think, oh, yes, it's quite a lot, isn't it, to sort of get through, and actually maybe the class will take too long kind of fiddling about, or maybe it's just a bit too complicated to put the time in to work out how it works. I don't think it is particularly complicated, but it does take a bit of work, but I think we could help a bit more in mapping what people do. So there are some of the points that I'm just going to raise, and people who come to this from different parts of the sort of First Folio world, I think will have sort of insight in how to do that and how to make that better. But I think the first thing I wanted to say was a thank you to Adam Matthew Digital, to AM Digital. I think this has been a really inspiring project, because I think of all the First Folio celebration things, it's the one which is really, in the best possible way, decoupled from ownership. Even though, of course, we acknowledge all the people who've given their data and given their copies. And I think because it does two other things. First, it makes literal something that's always said, but really never true in people's experience, which is that First Folio copies are unique. I think if you've just got one, I mean, which you're very lucky to have, or you're just looking at one, of course it's unique. So what does it actually mean to say of the broader set of copies of this book, these are unique? And I think this starts to help us to see that. And the second thing is, I mean, there are all kinds of ways that book historians like me can say, oh, the digital is no substitute for seeing the real thing. I could kind of do that talk if we were somewhere else, and I could partly believe it. And there is something very, very, very exciting, as you will all know, about people, the aura of these books and people encountering them. But there are lots of ways in which the digital is much, much better than the book. It's less hassle for you getting it out and feeling nervous about how it gets translated from. The only place I know is not nervous about this is Dulwich College, which is absolutely fabulous. It's the only place where you sit at a table and there's a little sort of boy who doesn't do well in the doesn't do well in the playground, and he comes along and he's got a little job to do, which is to investigate somebody off the War Memorial and go through the things, and he just sits opposite sniffing, and you've got the thing over. It's completely fantastic. But obviously most places it's a big job for you to get this out of the vault and know who's got to supervise and all of those things. But sort of in a way more kind of more seriously, I think the First Folio, one of the things I've thought a lot this year as we've been celebrating the 400th anniversary, is all the ways in which this book is absolutely everything we've been trying to say Shakespeare isn't for years. So it's a bit of a retrograde step in all kinds of ways. You know, we've been saying Shakespeare's on the stage, Shakespeare's for everybody, Shakespeare was not for elites, you know, everybody went to the theatre and all of that. And then we've got this really heavy, small print book, you know, with a lot of protocols about how you handle it and a lot of anxieties about doing it right. And I think either instead of or as a prelude to encountering the book in the flesh, this is a really great way to get people to feel confident about what's going on and what they might be looking for. So thanks to AM Digital. I think it's been a completely fantastic project, and it stopped us all. I think because this has been a trophy book for lots of people who own it, there have been a whole lot of one-off digitizing projects which have been quite lovely in themselves, but completely uninteroperable, and actually quite orphaned, even digitally, that they're not, you know, that they're in a kind of slightly stuck format And this, I think, for all of us who've been part of that, I was part of that in the Bodleian Library in Oxford, a site which now is really very, very clunky. It's fantastic to have these assets in a site, designed by experts who know how to maintain these platforms, how to make them accessible to users. So it's great to hear from Jan that Stonyhurst might join in, and maybe there'll be some others too. Okay, so let's just go. Here we are. We know all about this. Boo, we know all about that. Boom, we know all about these things we wouldn't have if we didn't have it. Perhaps we know a little bit about this too, where they all are. This is from folio400.com, a really brilliant free site that has been trying to gather together quite a lot of the activity. Some of you have been involved in that too. And I just thought I'd give you that because one of the things I was able to do for some research I did on this book was actually to travel to see a lot of copies. That now feels a kind of debauched way of doing research, I don't think people are going to want to or be able to do that in the future. Travelling to particular libraries is going to be much less of a feature of academic life, and so digitising has got a really important role to play. And I thought it was interesting to feel we've got the New Zealand one right over from the corner, quite a few of the North American ones, a little bit from the rest of Europe, and then some of the UK ones. Great to hear that may be increasing. I was also going to just show the metadata, but we've seen some of that. Maybe in response to Charlotte's question, we've got a few owners here. It's a bit small to see, but you can see there is a owner's full details, which gives us George Grey, the colonial governor of New Zealand, Charles Grylls, the earliest signature dated at the end of the 17th century, Anne Hurl, who we'll look at in a minute, and Quaritch, the booksellers. They're pretty incomplete, but one of the things I'm going to talk about, I think, is how people might be able to use this site to build up provenance stories. I think that's quite a good self-contained kind of activity, quite a doable activity for students or groups of students to do, particularly if they've got access to something like Ancestry.com or something, because these are not usually famous people, so they need to be looked at in that kind of world. But if you go through the parish registers and stuff that have all been digitised by the Mormons for the purposes of conversion, there's lots and lots and lots of sites for doing that, and that might be a thing that we build up a little bit, a sense how you would follow some of these names. So this is what I'm just going to do is just show some pages actually as exemplars of slightly larger folio themes, but also as sort of irreducibly particular things. I think that's one of the things this site enables us to look at, one-off things that are only in one copy and that are about the uniqueness of that, but others which give us some patterns of how people worked. This is quite an interesting feature of the Auckland copy, which we've just looked at. This I am Legi, I have read or has been read, which is a sort of quite an interesting tag for thinking about how did readers approach going through this book. Did they mark off what they had read? Is that what that actually means? What's being marked there? That it's next to a number of plays in this book. There's quite a lot to think about. Why those plays might be marked together. What kind of a person might have picked those out as their own kind of subset. And I suppose what I wanted to emphasise from the beginning is I don't think this work has been done. Claudine said that this is a very, very studied book, and that's true to an extent, but actually quite a lot of this sort of reception work has not been done, partly because these books have not been all that accessible, or they've been accessible in contexts where what's been most interesting about them has been the exemplary First Folio-ness rather than the particularity of that copy. I've tried to give these a bit bigger. This is Anne Hurl writing here. There's a whole lot of work to be done about women readers of Shakespeare. It's most definitely women, as we know, who secure Shakespeare's canonical place in all kinds of ways. The Shakespeare Ladies Reading Club, or whatever it's called in Stratford, in all kinds of contexts, women are important to the 17th and particularly, I think, the 17th century survival of Shakespeare, 17th into the 18th century. I'm thinking about how women might have read, what they might have read, what they might have made of what they read. This is the more or less last page of Othello, so it's the page where Desdemona is dead on the bed, and they're sort of talking about what's gone wrong. And here is Anne Hurl, who's written her name twice at the top of that page. Who knows what's going on for Anne Hurl? This is what she's picked out. She's also picked out elsewhere in the book a bit about the Duchess of Gloucester, which is also kind of interesting. She looks as if she's interested in sort of women in extreme situations. Again, it's a kind of interesting way to think about women as readers, as I say, and what they might be reading in particular. And just as a kind of, you could either try and find out everything you wanted to, or you could do about Anne Hurl, or just the fact that she did that, I think, could be a prompt for a way of thinking about this play and how it might fall. What we haven't done, we haven't got the metadata which tags every bit of marginalia or every signature. We talked about, I mean, that's an impossible job, really. And the good aspect of that is it is there to be found. You know, not everything can be searched for, and some of it still needs to be done by turning, using the tool to turn the pages. And I think that is quite an exciting aspect of the site. There is a way, as we just saw, you can search through and you can find what you want to find, but there's also a sense that you just have to look through and see what's there. One thing I would just say from my experience, I think Greg probably back this up too, there's an extraordinarily irregular attention to most First Folio copies. So you can turn pages and pages and pages and it looks as if nobody's ever read them, or there's nothing there at all, and then you suddenly just get to a section or even just an opening where somebody's just gone mad with either sort of mess or spilt something or writing or underlining or something. There's suddenly this kind of explosion of attention. We don't really know why that is, but it might feel as if the pages are quite boring, and that means that actually for the physical copies of these books, many of them, I think, have not had the pages turned. Absolutely in every one. Perhaps since they were, perhaps even ever, but not since they were, early in their lives. It's been really great fun going around quite a lot of places this year and thinking about their First Folio and what's great about it, and often saying, I was able to say in Leeds, oh, and there's a cat's paw print on yours, and they were so delighted. This was just a sort of ecstatic kind of moment. But even though they were so proud of the book and so delighted that they had it, of course nobody has time to go to, the second part of Henry VI and see that a cat has walked across it. So there's still an element of looking, I think. Here I've just picked out the one from Craven Museum and Gallery, which was only identified as a First Folio by Anthony James West, a brilliant scholar of this book. And as soon as it was identified as a First Folio rather than a second, it was immediately too valuable for anybody ever to look at again. And so this is a book which has hardly been looked at. It's very, very scruffy. It's not complete. But I think this digitized copy is actually a real coup for this site, because this is a book which has really been outside any kind of study. So it's where I immediately began, when I got access to the site, to have a kind of look through and try and get a sense, how does this book work? So again, a sense, some of these books are extremely feel as if they're extremely well known, but they're actually probably not. We're not that experienced with them. Here's I've just picked one other copy. This is from the Saint-Omer copy, I think. Yes, it is. This is from the Saint-Omer copy found in the Jesuit, the library of the Jesuit College in Saint-Omer. Dr. Jangrofios is here from Stonyhurst, knows much more about this aspect of folio use than I do, but the role of folios in this case, particularly in Jesuit education, in using the kind of rhetorical performance skills from drama to train up an evangelical core of effective preachers and with great memory and great recall. It's really obvious to see in lots of ways why plays would be that, but clearly the plays need a little bit of tweaking to be entirely appropriate training matter for young Jesuit seminarians. And there's a nice example here. I don't know if you can see it. Enter his lady. And there's a line through it, and it just says "left out," which I think is probably better, best done. Using this copy, which is marked up for the performance, I think, of little scenes, of usually two-hander scenes, or of set-piece declamation kind of exercises, it will be great to sort of try and pull back from this text something about what was that performance like. You could do the performance. Nobody's ever done that, I don't think, to say what do you get from that? What do you get if you actually do this? So I think that, and I think there's a whole range of examples of First Folios with an amateur performance connection that we might be able to build from here. So I suppose my emphasis in thinking about these, my emphasis in thinking about what this site can do is that it's actually quite flexible for people at a range of forms of sophistication, educational level, familiarity with the folio or with Shakespeare or with these texts. For some people, I think just the ease of looking at one pretty exemplary folio copy and looking at stage directions or looking at how certain characters are named or whatever is going to be sufficient. And I think this site now is the best way to do that. It's better than the Folger site, which has lots and lots of single images, but it's really, really difficult to work through. It's better than the Bodleian site, which was fantastic, but now is kind of 7 or 8 years old. We saw that you can search by signature mark, but you can also just search by play and by act, and you can search by words. So you can really find your way through without having a technical familiarity with the book. So I think just as a single First Folio copy, if you want to use First Folio for anything, I think this will be the go-to site to do that. But obviously, it's either the kind of search through these unfamiliar copies or that comparison feature, which I'm just kind of getting my head around. Which is I think the most interesting potential, and I think we've still got to think, and it will be great to hear from you as you have the chance to use the site, back home afterwards. What kinds of things you're throwing up? We've got a Twitter hashtag which possibly will get some use in that. It'll be really good for us to hear how you're using the comparison tool or any of the other tools. I think the comparison tool, and particularly the importation tool that we just saw, has extraordinary kind of potential in ways that we probably just haven't quite thought about quite yet. I think that's the Bodleian with its last bit of chewing. One of the things I suggest to people is that they look at the very end of the book. We spend a lot of time looking at the title page, don't we, and what that's like. But actually, the last page of Cymbeline is one of the most interesting, often because it's been so vulnerable. It's been so reframed or patched in all kinds of different ways. So I think I'm going to stop there, and maybe we can take any questions or any points for discussion. Is that okay, Claudine? Thank you.
The first one's more an observation with the opportunities of big data to do like crowdsourced capture, like Google Maps have done or TNA have done with their big digitized sort of data sets. It's just an observation that's quite exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So you would do like that. There's been, there's quite a lot of expertise already in transcription projects, aren't the crowdsourced transcription.
You need like a workflow so
You
that
need-
goes to the expert, but people being able to identify.
Yeah.
where to look.
Exactly, and I think there's an excitement about that often, an energy about that around the site if you get people to do it. In my experience, it looks as if you need to have a day or 2 days when people do it, because if they can do it at any point, they don't, or we don't. None of us does. But that's a really interesting idea about thinking about how you would, make a bit more markup. Yeah.
And then that led me to think of a question, which is maybe like across all of you, because if you are bringing together different digitized copies, they're going to be taking different technical approaches. So, they might have, removed weights, say, which might also remove marginalia. It's that navigating that, and I don't know if that's been an issue, or it is, it is the data you have. It's such an improvement from what we have had that it sounds like a criticism, but it's something to navigate.
Yeah, there are some aspects we've had to navigate so far. So, for instance, there are a few folios that were double-page spreads in the images.
Yeah.
But yeah, we contacted an external imaging company, and they were able to slice all of those down for us so that we could still put them in, and they look as if they were digitised as single images.
Single pages, but it was more thinking about the potential loss, particularly, the simple thing would be like an image crop, because the purpose of that image creation is for something else.
Yes.
That's what I mean, and then if people see it, it's like the internet, they think everything's on the internet, and they think that's, yeah.
I think we've been quite lucky in that because digitisation equipment is so excellent, they can get so up close because the resolution is so incredible. I actually forgot to show on the site, but you can zoom in really far on those images, and they are crystal clear.
To be fair, I guess because we didn't digitise the First Folios ourselves, we are limited by the digitalisation that took place in each institution. I mean, some places it happened, I think, like in the 90s or early noughties. People were hunting around in their digital cupboards trying to they send it to us and they said, actually we've lost a page in the middle. Let me try and see if I can find it. So there was a bit of they weren't all done in the last year or so. Some of them were done a while ago. So I guess there's potential, it's not exactly perfect because we didn't consistently do them all the same like we would for our other projects. So I guess nothing's perfect in life, is it?
I think that's what we're hoping the exhibit portrays, the digitisation process exhibit, just to show there's a lot that goes into this. So
yes, and we had that. So that exhibit was from SBT.
Yes,
Amy from SBT. So you might not know that. Amy was at SBT.
With the digitizer, but he couldn't be removing. He had to take 2 images because he can remove sections of the
with the tilting.
as he would usually do to smooth it out, because even if there's not marginalia, there might be damage, which is you want to capture on. And then obviously there's the potential for UV and spectral editing. Sorry, I just feel like this is very exciting.
I think the UV spectral imaging, which has been done a little bit on some copies usually to find marks of ownership, has been really, really, really interesting, and is a good,
it's a good option.
Yeah,
you don't want to invest that unless you've got like a potential trail. You need a sort of
Yeah, absolutely. I have not engaged with that myself, and I don't know now how expensive it is to do. It's probably one of those things which is
horribly expensive.
Is it still? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we know that the media shapes, shapes what we see. I mean, that's in some ways that's intrinsic to First Folio-ness, isn't it? That it is a folio shapes what it is and how it's received, and that's the same about digitising, even though that can sometimes seem invisible. So I think it's a really important point that the transmission and the remediation it shouldn't be invisible. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Great. Well, Will, would you like to ask a question? So I'm so sorry.
Have you? I was interested by your comment about the thousands of pages and picking out the ones that have marginalia. Are you working yet with a partner to try and find a machine way of doing that? And my reason for asking is that there's work that's in development in Durham to train machine to recognise the difference between text and marginalia, and they're defining marginalia quite broadly, so it might just be something that's underlined, or it might be a molecule or something like that. And it strikes me that if you've got, 20, 30 copies of the same text, and some have different marginalia, that's an interesting machine learning case study. So if you're interested in sort of partnering in that, then get in touch.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was at a presentation from colleagues from Australia National University who are doing a big marginalia in early books project, and part of that, the majority of that has been done by people going and turning pages, but they're trying now to see whether they can use the amount, all the data that they've got as part of machine learning training. There's part of me, and I think that's a really interesting, in some ways it's a bigger question, isn't it? It's a kind of conceptual question about the site. Is it a place where you discover things and you don't know what you're going to discover, or is it a place which has done a huge amount of data crunching already, which then people can do new things with? I think at the moment it's the first, and that we are in some way piggybacking on First Folio-ness this year to think, have a look yourself, isn't it interesting? Have an explore, have a poke around. That second model is an extraordinarily sort of powerful, exemplary tool. Shakespeare's always been used to develop new technologies. The telephone gets a Shakespeare call. That's early on in the first day of the first telephone calls, there's a reading of Shakespeare, wax cylinder Shakespeare's and all that. It's been a real, can ChatGPT write a Shakespearean sonnet? Shakespeare is the test case always for technological developments, and we could certainly use it. Certainly use it here.
We did actually discuss the marginalia element, didn't we, when we were putting the site together? I'm just looking at Martin because he heads up our Cortex platform team. Do you have some thoughts? I thought you might have some thoughts on this.
Well, we can, with our HDR technology, this is the manuscript transcription technology, we can spot the differences. It's just the time taken then to go through the different transcripts that we can generate to actually establish and spot. So there still is a manual element, basically, we're saying. But yeah, we could potentially spot the difference between folios where there is annotation. Yeah,
I think it's one of those things where you wait for the technology to sort of facilitate it in a way that doesn't require too much manual labour to highlight those elements. But yeah, well, we're keeping an eye on it, aren't we?
And there's obviously a lot to do with data mining and so on with regard to the transcription elements and so on as well. Yeah, but maybe we should have a chat and see if there's sort of, to use the word synergies.
First use, I think, so far this afternoon. Yeah.
Will, did you have a question for Emma?
Very quickly, Emma, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation the sort of next stage where you're thinking of ways to use the comparison site and the site itself in teaching at kind of various levels. And have you had ideas yet? You said sort of selfishly thinking to extract the ideas from you in terms of how this might kind of activate and help teach you in classroom use.
So I've got loads of ideas of sort of exercises you could do with this book, or with aspects of the book, and with particular pages that are kind of useful for particular, particularly for study of Shakespeare rather than for study of the First Folio. So there's some. There are some users of this site for whom the First Folio is the object, but for most of us and for most of our teaching and readers and other people around, the object is Shakespeare, and this is one means to sort of do that. So I think that could be a really interesting sort of crowdsourced idea. One of the things I used to love about the Folger Teachers site was that they had a whole, did anybody else ever use it, list of sort of have a go at this is what I did. And if you were sort of really stuck and thinking, oh God, what will I do with this? You could find something, even that someone had done like in a primary school or something, and you think, okay, that's actually a really interesting idea, and here's the here's the page that I can sort of get to. So I think it would be great to do some of that. So you could teach sort of textual variants, but you could teach them in a way saying, does it matter? You could teach sort of what do editors do. I think you can teach, I've taught a kind of anti-Semitism or race on how the toggle between Aaron and Moore in the apparatus of Titus, or between Jew and Shylock in the apparatus for Merchant of Venice. So these are sort of moments that kind of introduce themes that you might not think of as being strictly textual, which seems the way to go.
I'm reminded from that question of a train journey with you from, I think possibly from Dublin, and that kind of conversation, thinking about how this might actually be really an interesting way of linking some of the folios that are in the diaspora spread around the world with their original sites, so that there are sort of places over England that used to have a folio that's now, here in Stratford we have that there's a, the Vicar of Holy Trinity used to have a copy of the folio, which is now in Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And just the sense that there may be, by being able to compare the copies for school kids, I don't know, where is that copy now? Where's our nearest copy? I think there's some really interesting ideas around kind of global connections in a way through a site like this.
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? That mapping, but also mapping historically, and not necessarily at the aggregate level, but at the individual level. Yeah, we're both suckers for this, just because, largely because I discovered that the Gott family, who were the great mill owners in Leeds, where I grew up, and everything was called Gott Park, Gott Avenue, Gott School. They had a First Folio. Exactly, which is now in the Folio, of course. So I do think that it's the sort of hologram folios that I think we should have all over the place.
I sort of want to know, the theatre copy, the RSC's copy, had its Droussard engraving removed, and it's now in one of the American universities. I want it back from
It would be brilliant to be able to do that. I mean, one of the things about the Glasgow copy, which we haven't got here, but maybe we will get at some point, is it's very clearly a kind of a mashup. But interestingly, it's not a mashup of clean copies, which is usually the mashups you get. It's a way of making a sort of perfect copy because it's got no marks on it. This is obviously the kind of leftover one because it's got loads and loads of different marks. And it should be possible to find some of the other pages. We should be able, it would be like one of those, here's the torso of this great statue here, and here's the head here, and we'll have a great, wonderful sort of meeting in the High Commission somewhere. We should be able to do some of that. I think the Droussard is really difficult to trace though, because it was always a single leaf. So they are sort of off on their own, I think, as almost a separate text.
Sorry, our first Folio was the Saint-Omer one that you showed, which was edited for performance by schoolboys at our institution on the stage. And we have, since we left that behind very carelessly in 1762, we have about 1,000, 1,500 dramatic pieces, a lot of which are based on Shakespeare, a lot of which are the Henry the Fourth Part 2, which have the same censorings from 1623 right up to 1880s, no women on stage. Lady Macbeth becomes Uncle Donald. No, truly. Ophelia becomes Eric. Miranda becomes Mirando, and so on. So what I'm hoping to do with our second First Folio is to use that as a sort of a starting point to link in all of these archival sort of ephemera and manuscripts that we have. And it would be nice to know that this project could accommodate that. And then my second point is we have a huge amount of material culture relating to the historical characters in Shakespeare. We've been collecting stuff since 1609. So we've got the head of
Bishop of Ely, who appears on Richard III, which we picked up in 1658, and a whole load of other physical artefacts. So I'm hoping also eventually that we can have a list of sort of things, material culture, that relate back to Shakespeare. So from my point of view, the First Folio is just simply a sort of stepping off point rather than the end point.
You're absolutely, I mean, that's really interesting. It sounds like you need the bespoke system that we heard about before. I'm above all this. I don't know anything about that. I think what you say, Jan, is really interesting. One of the sort of intellectual or conceptual or even ideological problems you could say about this site is it sees First Folios only as in conversation with themselves. And that the category of analysis is First Folio rather than Shakespeare in a particular place or Shakespeare on the stage, or absolutely. And I think that's a limitation that we needed to set to make the site coherent. I mean, there's a huge need for an AM digital site on Shakespeare quartos, I think, which, you know, the quartos projects that have all lapsed because of sort of lack of funding, really, lack of funding for the. I can see Claudine's writing.
Write down the word quarters. Yeah.
So I definitely think that, you know, that question the context you set out seems to be completely fundamental to what this object is, and that you can only answer that by saying what do you want to put it alongside. So, you know, I remember once having a good fortune to meet somebody who owned a folio privately. We went from his library in Hampshire out to a wood he had planted in the shape of a Union Jack for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. And I thought, yeah, that's the context here. You know, that's what the folio is alongside, and that's a different book. And yours with your heads of bishops and so on is also clearly a very different book. And I think that's a great conversation to generate. But I think our limitations here were a different conversation. Yeah.
I'm really sorry, we've run out of time for questions. Otherwise we're going to run out of time for all the other wonderful things we need to hear about. But there'll be a coffee break after the next talk, so you can save your questions forever for then.
Brilliant.
But
let's
thank you so much, Emma.